everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Isabella. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I am a sophomore at Lane Tech.
Hi, everybody. My name is Lee Nah. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a senior at Lane Tech.
Okay, so if you guys are not familiar with TAP, it stands for the Teen Arts Pass, where a program of arts education organization, urban gateways, and through TAP, anyone from the ages of 13 to 19 can get $5 tickets to performances with our partner organizations all around the Chicago area. Of course, there aren't any performances you can see right now, so TAP and Urban Gateways are working on their ways to provide interesting arts experiences for teens.
And Isabella and I are members of the Urban Gateways Teen Advisory Council, a group of 12 teens from Chicago that inform teens teen art programs, including TAP. We are the group responsible for today's event, and there will be a lot more coming from us soon. Follow at Teen Arts Pass on Instagram, and be sure to sign up at teenartspass.org to get information about all of the upcoming free events and programs for teens.
So what is our event today? So Hello, I Am, Conversations with Professionals is a Teen Arts Pass Council initiative that connects teens with artistic professionals. So the Teen Council wants to ensure that teens have the opportunity to hear about professional artists' journey in their artistic field. And we also wanted to make sure the teens have a chance to ask questions and get information. So please take advantage of the Q&A feature today. We will be having a Q&A section at the end.
And today's special artist is Krieg Thomas, who is a music supervisor for film and TV based in Los Angeles. She's overseen the music on TV series such as Life in Pieces, Claws, The Politician, and the Assassination of Gianni Versace, American Crime Story, and recently worked on the Netflix musical The Prom. She's currently working on the newest season of The Prom and young adults thriller Panic and the Shrink Next Door, starring Will Ferrell and Paul Rudd.
All right, so without further ado, I'd like to introduce Amanda. Hello.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us today. So we're just gonna have a little kickoff question. So if you could describe your day as a fruit, what would it be?
My day as a fruit? Oh my goodness, it would be, can it be a fruit salad?
Yeah, definitely.
I will describe it as a fruit salad with, I don't know, all sorts of things. Pineapples, grapes, apples, probably mangoes. Yeah, many fruits in one salad.
Sounds delicious. Cool. So the next question we have is actually one that we got from registration, and it is, what inspired you to work as a music supervisor?
Well, I kind of fell into it a little bit. Like growing up, I didn't really know that this was was a career. In my mind, there's like theater and film, and like theater is one thing, and then in film, if you're going in film, you're doing directing, producing, acting, maybe editing. I just did, I could name the jobs I knew on my hand, and so I moved out to LA thinking I would be a writer. And so I was kind of just like looking for any job that would kind of get me closer to working as a writer or working as a producer. And I ended up getting a job at a film studio, working for the music lawyer. And it was just sort of like, I needed a job, any job. I knew nothing about making any kind of movies because I studied theater. And I was like, I can make a play, but I cannot make a movie. I don't know anything about this. And figured if I could learn how music gets put to picture and like their legal background of that, I was like, oh, that seems important. Maybe I can use that as a springboard. But once I sort of like got under the hood in what kind of the whole new world of putting music in film or TV, I kind of just fell in love with it. It was like a lucky job that I thought would just be like a 1 year and then, onward to the next, that kind of just inspired the next, the whole career. Cause I had no idea, I just found music really fascinating, and like the back end of it. And like, there are multiple owners of songs and like the clearance, and then you get to do creative stuff too. And it was like, that's why I say my job is a fruit salad, because it's like, I don't know, there's like, you're doing creative things one day and like really logistical things the other day, and doing spreadsheets and then math and negotiating. Like there's so much to it. And that, once I sort of got a peek at what that was and all the things it could be, I found it just really fascinating and really interesting. And it's kind of rode the wave a little bit.
Yeah, that's super interesting. It's kind of like, you know, all these different aspects and all these different kind of like skill sets you got to take on for your job. So I'm curious to know, what was the first ever project
Mhm.
that you worked on?
Oh no, I'm frozen, I think. Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, what was the first project that you worked on?
The first project that I worked on. Well, my first job ever was at Lionsgate in the film space, and one of my it was called this. There was this movie called The Winning Season. I've barely heard of it. Like it was like such a small thing, and I was not the supervisor on it, but that was sort of the first time I got a look at like the creative side of it all, and like helped my boss was the head of film music at the studio at the time. And that was it was yeah, it was called The Winning Season, and that was like the first time I got to help with like creative searches and like do that side of it. And I was like, oh, that's I get to like think about what this character would listen to. Like that's so cool. And that was probably the first time I'll call that like, yeah, one of my first projects that I remember.
That's amazing. The next question is, what kind of theatrical work did you do in high school and college?
So much. Well, growing up, I just always loved theater. And so, up and for a long time, the only thing you could do was really act. And so, or like try to act. So that was really like, I acted, but then I always got like terrible parts. And so I was like, I don't think I'm maybe cut out to be an actor. And only in like later high school were there opportunities to really work backstage. Like there was maybe like run crew a little bit, but that never really interested me. But then my senior year, junior year, there were like more opportunities to kind of like produce and like put together events. And I was like, oh, I think this is really what I'm more suited to be doing. And it was like really so late in my high school career that I did so little of it there. But my drama teacher was like, there's a thing called stage managing. I think you would be really good at it. So when you get to college, like you should try that. And so I literally got to college and I was like, I don't know what I should be doing here, but like I'm told I should do this thing called stage managing. And that really was what I did through most of college. It was I would stage manage. I would raise my hand for all the big musicals, and I was just like, sign me up for that one. Like, give me the hard ones. I want those. And and then I did also like a little bit of producing and a little bit of directing in college as well. But those always like those were sort of the areas that I lived in when I was doing theater in college.
I'm definitely like also a theater kid at heart. So that was really interesting to hear about, just kind of like leading to one thing and kind of build like, you know, finding more about leading your path to your future career.
Yeah, and so much of theater really, really impacts like in both obvious ways on something like the prom, and then in less obvious ways. Like there is such a like what I do now feels like such a combination of all of those experiences doing theater for sure.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's all just kind of like a web kind of like
Mhm.
connecting skill sets. Um, so I'm curious to know, what is, I mean, your job, obviously you have to listen to a bunch of different type of music. So I'm curious to know, what is your favorite genre of music?
What is my favorite genre? Um, I have been really enjoying, I'm doing like I do so many different types of shows, and I've been really enjoying like this YA show I'm working on called Panic, a young adult show. And the directive on it has been very like what's current. and with the kids, what you are all listening to. And so it's been sort of like interesting and fun to sort of go down the rabbit holes of honestly like a lot of pop music and like what is pop music right now. And so like, you know, like Dagny, and there's like G Flip and like all of that type of sound, and like Conan Gray is like a whole thing right now apparently. And it's like learning this whole new language. And it's like, you know, Billie Eilish, who at first I was like, I don't get this. And then like the more I listened to her, I'm like, oh, this is actually like really well done. And there's just, you know, like current pop music, I think there's some of it that I'm like, oh, I don't know if I'm the target audience, but a lot of it is just like the production is really interesting. And like, there's this artist called Cray, Cray, that if like one of my teammates like introduced me to, and another one called Antisocial. Anyway, pop music is really interesting right now. And like that I will say current pop music, especially like a little bit darker. And then 70s music. I've really enjoyed going down the rabbit holes for 70s music. I don't know. It's like really like Fleetwood Mac really compels me. So like, you know, and I honestly didn't really grow up with like a deep musical education and a deep musical knowledge. So working on so many different shows with different time periods and genres, they're all like research projects for me. And it just ends up like, it's just like, I just fall in love with everything. I'm like, oh man, I didn't know, like, you know, Talking Heads' first album came out in 1977. I had no idea. They're 70s band kind of. Anyway, so it's like, I've kind of fallen in love with everything, but I haven't worked on like a metal project, and that might be I don't know if I'll fall in love with metal.
That is so cool to hear. I definitely love my 70s music. I love my Fleetwood Mac too.
Yeah.
The next question that we have is actually asked from someone in the chat, and they asked, who are your close collaborators in your role as a music supervisor?
Well, that's a great question. It kind of changes project by project, but often you are like, you know, upwards, you're dealing a lot with, if the film, you're dealing with the director quite a lot, you're dealing with like the producers quite a lot, and you're dealing with editors quite a lot. Like that I didn't realize going into it, how much really you work very closely with film, with the editors, whether it's film or TV. And that's a real like you're a really big ally for you, or it can be your worst enemy as well. And so then and TV functions a little differently, where like there isn't necessarily like the director is there, like different episodes have directors, but it's really a showrunner, like one producer sort of overseeing the whole thing. So you're working with that person, you're working with like producers under that person quite a lot, because like your job, you end up doing a lot of budgeting and charts and like having to sort of be like, this is how much everything costs, like, and so you're often dealing with sort of like the more logistics producers as well on that type of thing, because they're asking you and you're the one who's supposed to know. So I would say those are the main ones, you know, your editors, producers, showrunners, composers, sometimes depending on the show. And then on something like The Prom, which was a musical, I was like talking 5 times a day. We had like an executive music producer who was producing all the music for the thing. So he was like, I was sort of coordinating everything, but he was the one actually like producing the music itself. And so he and I would talk like, I don't know, 5 times a day, just like constantly. And so, yeah, it kind of just shifts, but those are probably the main ones.
Yeah, it's just like a bunch of communication, you know, yeah, making sure everyone's on the same page.
Yes, rare, and they rarely are.
Oh, yes.
All of that. You get emails from the art department being like, can we show this album cover? And you're like, no, what are you talking about? So it's like you get emails from all sides, but those would be the main ones.
I'm curious to know, how has your job changed during this pandemic?
Well, you know, we, like a lot of things, like the whole film industry shut down for a long time. Like nothing was shooting. So, you know, I was fortunate to have a few projects that like finished shooting, and then so they were just focused on cutting footage together and like trying. So then my job could continue in that capacity. It's really affected anything relating to shooting most of the time. I mean, I guess to go back to the post-production of it all, which is like once it's shot, once the film is shot, we go into post-production. And things that have changed there is like oftentimes we get together to like meet and talk about an episode and be like, where's the music? You can't meet in person anymore. Or like oftentimes when you finish an episode of television and a film, like everybody gets in one of those big rooms with a giant screen and like listens to how everything sounds. And that doesn't happen anymore. So there's like all this new technology that's come into play to allow us to like work similarly, but just remotely, which I love, honestly, because I don't have to drive. I mean, this is LA, like you don't have to drive. I love not having to drive and not parking and all that stuff. But then for shooting, it's really been interesting because film sets have become kind of like hospitals. Like you have to get tested 3 times over, like to show up on set. There's all sorts of like new medical staff, and like you have to wear masks, socially distanced, and like there's all sorts of new protocols that like it used to be if you needed to do like a recording session for something, you could put it together very quickly and be like, call a film studio, like a recording studio, I need 2 hours, you go there, like very fast. But now it's like, this person needs to be tested 2 days in advance before they go anywhere. You need the studio needs to be approved by this, and this. Like you need to outline what you're doing before you can do anything. So it's really, slowed it down, but there's just many more steps to just make sure everything is done in a super safe way. And like singing is actually considered one of the most high risk activities on a film set now because of COVID. So anytime you're doing anything relating to it, it's like a whole new thing, whole new world to like get the right approvals and make sure everybody involved is being as safe as possible. So it's been interesting.
It's great to hear that people are taking precautions over there, and I'm sure that things are crazy right now, but
yeah, you wouldn't know it looking at the LA COVID numbers, but there are a lot of, for the film sets especially, like they really have to, it's like it's really very, very different.
Cool. So the next question is about your own project, the A-Team Productions, and it is, how did A-Team Productions come to be?
Well, I've been really, really fortunate in my career, I have to say, and so it came to be because I've worked at a bunch of different places, and in this career field, a lot of the way, not the only way, but one of the main ways a lot of people kind of rise up is it's very apprenticeship based. And so you get a job working for a supervisor, or, whether it's like an independent person or a small company like mine, or, like a studio, you work under somebody and you learn from them. And I've been really fortunate to work with a few different music supervisors who I've really admired. And the kind of last in the line of that is I was working at a company called Neophonic, which is another music supervision firm, kind of like collective of supervisors. And I worked under this music supervisor named PJ Bloom, who worked on a show called Glee. I don't know, people have heard of that one, I think. And he worked with Ryan Murphy for 15 years, among other amazing people. And he was really a mentor to me. And we worked together for a couple years, and then he sort of, he's been doing it for years and years, and kind of said one day, he's like, I'm going to leave music supervision. I'm going to take a job somewhere else, and I'm going to tell all the people to hire you. I'm going to tell all the people who hire us to hire you. And, and that, of course, that included Ryan Murphy, who's one of the most prolific creators of television. And it was a very scary moment to be in that position. And it worked out. And so I worked at Neophonic, I basically was like, if I can keep the people working with me for a year, and I'll see how it goes. And like, hopefully they don't fire me, and hire someone else. I'm like, who am I to work on all these? And so I started, working, and it just like ramped up very quickly. So I kind of took on all these projects for myself, and it just got really busy really fast. And soon I was just like working on my projects under this other umbrella company. And it was like, why, I respected everybody I worked with, but it felt like I had enough of a client base and was like doing well enough that I could go out on my own. And I spoke to my producers, my people who hire me. And I was like, if I did this, would you support me? And they were like, yeah, absolutely. Like we work with you, we know you, we'll go where you go. And so that was really kind of the birth of Yay Team. I was like, I'm going to just try this thing. Can I see how it goes? Like, just take a leap and see if I can make this thing happen. And that was fall 2018. And I just hired my third employee. So it's worked out pretty well. And that's how it started.
It's interesting to hear about how kind of like, it was kind of like this building up to almost of like creating the Yay Team and kind of, like you said, hiring people and sort of making like your own way and your own path with your experience. That's really cool to hear about, honestly. So our next question is from our chat, one of our participants. So have you ever worked with someone that you admired?
Oh my God, all the time, constantly. I still, like, every day I'm like, how did I, but even before going out on my own, all the people I worked with, I really admired. Like PJ, who I mentioned, was a music supervisor who just like, I was like a titan in the industry, and to like get to work under him. And then the founder of Neophonic started music supervising in 1980, which is before I was born. And like, he did Baywatch and an Evian Clean, like icon. Julia Michaels worked on Pitch Perfect and Devil Wears Prada. Like, I got to work and watch these people work, which was just like mind blowing. But then now, like, one of the shows I work on, Ryan Murphy is like really like incredible. Just like, I can't believe I'm like working on those shows. And, I'm doing a show with Michael Showalter right now, who was in Wet Hot American Summer. And like, he's like a very big name in comedy. And I'm like, I can't believe like he has my phone number. And one of the other shows I work on, I'm like naming shows that are probably not appropriate, but one of them is the show called Big Mouth, which is on Netflix. And I was a humongous fan of that show. Like, we'd like tell everyone to watch it. And like, totally out of the blue, one of the producers reached out to me on Twitter and was like, hey, like, we really, really admire your work. Like, we're thinking about like just meeting people. Would you come in for a meeting? And like, long story very short, I got called into this sort of general meeting with two of like there's like 4 executive producers, non-Nick Kroll, but like the 2 other main producers. And it was like supposed to be just a meet and greet. And it was it was like, oh, you're going to hire someone for Big Mouth. You're looking to hire a new person on Big Mouth. And I sat in a room with these people on the show that I had been such a huge fan of. And they were like, yeah, we like read an interview with you and we think you're really like, we loved what you had to say. And I got hired on 2 shows. And I'm just like, I sit on Big Mouth table reads, and during a spinoff called Human Resources. And I'm like, I can't believe I get to like sit in this, now it's all Zoom, but I'm like, there's Nick Kroll, there's Jason Mantzoukas, there's, Jenny Slate or Maya Rudolph, and like, just like watching them do these, it was like, every day I wake up and I'm like, I can't believe I get to work on what I get to work on. Like, they're going to find out someday that I'm like a total fraud, but not yet.
No. It's super awesome to hear these like recognizable names that we all kind of know and see your work with them. So the next question is also one that we got from registration, and it is, what is your best advice about how to deal with rejection in the industry?
Stay humble. I will say that. I had an experience like a few years in, and it was a really like, I got like let go of a job, and like didn't know, I felt like it was a very personal situation, and it was a really humbling experience. And I just sort of like took a step back, and I was like, okay, well, like, it was a moment where I guess I thought I was like ahead of where I was, or I should have been somewhere I wasn't, like ahead of, and I got laid off, and I was like, what do I do now? And it was that moment of being humble that enabled me to sort of like broaden my horizons in a way that I wasn't doing. And what led me to the job at Neophonic, and if I hadn't been laid off and had that moment of just like feeling crushed and like, what am I doing? I would have not taken, I would have just been like, oh, I'm above that. I don't need that gig. And that job completely changed my life. And so that, yeah, I would just say like, just kind of take that moment and like, then look widen your net for what's right for you in that moment. And you never know, you like never know what the thing that comes that will change your life.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's all about, I don't know, it's so profound. Just, making sure
Just
that.
dropping knowledge bombs
Yeah.
here.
Definitely.
What do we do, EA team?
So I wanted to ask you about your book. So your book that you released, Thinking in Sync, it's pretty much kind of like a guide in some ways, just like a bunch of information about licensed musics and about the industry. So I'm just, wondering if you could share with us a little bit about like why you decided to take on the project and how that kind of came to be.
Yeah, it was like, it's funny, like I started it when I was like really so new in my career. So like, who was I to do that? But like, what it is just sort of a compendium of advice for artists and songwriters and anybody who's like making music or working with music and wanting to like pitch it to supervisors. And it came from just like watching, like I get probably like hundreds of emails every day from different people wanting to get music into film and television. So we just would like, I just see the same mistakes over and over again. And then I talk to my friends, because we're all very close in this industry, and they would be seeing the same thing too. And we'd all just be like, if only people just like all knew to do this, and like, why don't people like use links, and like, why don't people like send us their contact information? And like, it was just this litany of complaints that would just happen all the time. And like, and it would just be topics of conversation. It would come up on panels constantly. And I was like, I can't always in real time offer feedback or advice. So I was like, why don't I just like write all this in one place? And it was like a 5-year on and off kind of like labor of love of just, like, man, people who are trying to get their music to us don't have any idea of what we're dealing with. Like, we always ask for instrumentals and they have no idea why that is. It's because we need to, so it was like just trying to give this knowledge, but also say like, here's why. It's like, we need this, yes, like fast, because we're getting fast requests from this and we have to deal with this. So like, this is why we're asking for these things. And so that's kind of where it came from, of just honestly people making mistakes constantly and just being like, I can't tell people I can't keep giving the same feedback again and again. So here it is, here's one place, go for it. And like, it's at a very, I made it at a very like general, pretty affordable price point. And like, I'm just like, hopefully it helps. It's a very most basic level of like, I write music. What do I do with it if I want to get it in film and TV? And
that's so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And so the next question is based on where you're currently at. And someone from the chat asked, I want to move to LA for college. Do you like living in LA? How is it different from where you're originally from?
Well, I'm originally from the East Coast. I grew up in Connecticut. I went to school in Chicago at Northwestern. And so then I moved to LA, and it was a pretty big, go Cats. It was a pretty big culture shock for me a little bit. I do love LA. It took me 2 years. I moved here, and I'll never forget, a friend of mine was like, it'll take you 2 years to really love LA. And it took me basically 2 years, but I moved here without any support system at all. Like I didn't even have like a roommate. I was like, let's move to LA together with. I was totally by myself. Like I knew people a little bit, but no one I was close with. And all of my friends were in Chicago or moved to New York. And so it took a long time to like find that group. But I think if you have at least one person who will like explore LA with you, it's a great city. There's so much to do. There's so many little neighborhoods that you can fall in love with. And you know, you have to kind of also find your little nook. And we, you know, like I found the places that we like, my husband and I, we love. And once you sort of have that and you figure that out, there's a lot to love about it. It's like you can hike any time of the year. You can hike like right out your back door, like, you know, very close, 20-minute, 10 minutes, you can go on a hiking trail and be in a mountain. And that's pretty amazing. Like that weather is pretty unbeatable, gotta say. So it took me a little bit. It's not like automatic, but I missed seasons. I missed people. I missed friends initially. I miss being able to walk places, but if you're in the right place in LA, you can walk places. It's not like impossible. So, yeah, I would say moving from somewhere else, it does take a little bit of adjustment, but you know, I think we're here for a while, but yeah, it's a good city. It's not as bad as people make it out to be.
Yeah. So kind of like on the topic of, I guess, like change and just kind of like growth, you know, like going to a new place and like navigating that. Obviously, like you've had a lot of experiences, a lot of work that you've done. So I'm curious, like, what would you tell your 16-year-old self? Like, what kind of advice would you have?
Wow. That's also profound. I would tell my 16-year-old self probably that it's just like all going to be okay, you know? And I think that like there's just thinking about like all the things that have happened and all the changes. And like, I'm very much someone who's just like, gotta keep working, gotta keep going, gotta like go, 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 go. Like, gotta like be like work as hard as possible, work harder than anyone else. And I feel like I would tell my 16-year-old self that like, you can chill out a little bit and like work hard and like do what you're gonna do. But like, you know, it's gonna be okay. You don't, you know, like it's like it's all gonna be okay. Like I wasn't. You don't. Sometimes you can take the foot off the gas a little bit, and you'll still be okay.
That's amazing to hear. So the next one is also from the chat, and a guest asked, how have you ever wanted to compose music for media, or have you tried in the past?
No, never. I've never wanted to. I mean, sometimes I've been involved in songwriting processes, and that's kind of fun. Not in like writing the actual words, but like giving feedback on the song. And that I like, but I don't think I could like write a song personally. I like working with people who are very good at it. I'm very much about like, let people who are very good at a job be good at their job instead of trying to do every job. And so with composing, I mean, who knows? Talk to me in like 5 years, but I don't think I would, you know, I like working with composers rather than being the composer.
Yeah, that is totally valid, honest, kind of like, yeah. Oh, okay. Yes, there's another question from a participant. Were there any activities or opportunities that you did in college which you feel helped your career later, like later on in your career?
Stage managing, fully stage managing. I mean, the temperament I had to sort of teach myself and like the organization involved, like especially doing the prom, that like it was stage managing 100%. I had to make sure actors had to be in places. I had to keep a spreadsheet of like, you know, who was going, like that was so critical in like everything. I mean, yeah, that was really it, like the opportunities in stage managing. And like I did big things, I did small things. Those are probably the most formative from college. And it like also helped me like dealing with theater people and doing that, because I get to say like, oh, I study, I'm a theater person, I'm one of you, because a lot of people actually in what I do don't come from theater. They come from kids who were music nerds who wanted to work at a record label and like also loved film. And like that's like I'm kind of like an anomaly in that I have this very strong theater background that I'm really proud of. But like interpersonal skills no matter what, like it's always going to be critical in any field you go into, and especially in entertainment when you're dealing with creative people who are artists, have big personalities. So learning how to, as a stage manager, learning how to navigate those was pretty critical.
That sounds like such an interesting journey of navigating relationships and people in your field as a one theater nerd. And I think this is going to be the last question to tie off the night. And it is, what advice would you give teens that are interested in becoming music supervisors?
Well, I would say, there are a couple online classes, but they're super expensive. But they're good. There's a Berkeley class that people like. That's probably the main class you can take. But I mean, short of that, there are some like books and things. Mine isn't really about how to be a music supervisor, but it does talk about the job of a music supervisor. The Guild of Music Supervisors is a really good resource, and we're kind of on a little bit of a lull right now, but like there's regularly like free panels, and they would be like, it's like, I guess it's like middle of the day Thursday, which is maybe not helpful for people in school, but there's also a YouTube, every panel is put up on YouTube and it's all free. So there's all sorts of free content that the Guild is putting out, like YouTube things and podcasts and stuff like that. That they're probably like, some of them are like really about craft stuff, and some of them are just sort of like I moderated one. I was like, I'm fairly involved about like horror movies, and they're just sort of like fun to talk about music and horror movies. So that's, I think, are probably a really good resource. And then if you're like actually interested in pursuing the, like to the point where you're like, I want to start internships are always good. I think more and more people, which is really good and critical, are open to paid internships. I think that like our field has kind of started swinging from like, oh, you must get school credit, to like, paying people. And that's really a great way to get in is interning, because it's all relationships. And so at the right time looking for internships. And Chicago doesn't so much have a lot of independent music supervisors, but they've got a lot of great people in ads. So there are a lot of wonderful humans doing the job in Chicago, but it is for film and TV, it's very LA based. So it's like reckon with moving to LA at some point in time as well. And yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Amanda, for taking time out of your day and coming to talk with us. We appreciate all your insights and the stories you shared with us today. Yes, thank you. And thank you to everyone who joined us today and asked questions. Hello, I Am Conversations with arts professionals would not be possible without you. So thank you all so much.